Hi guys, welcome back to the Chase with AJ Baez. Today I have a very special guest, Allissa Soriano from Bakersfield, California. Hi Alyssa, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So yeah, fill us in a little bit about like who you are, where you're from, like when you started playing soccer and so forth.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm from Bakersfield, California. Um, I've been playing soccer since I was like 3. I started ASO like most people. Played that for a few years, started club pretty early at 7. Um, and then continued that obviously. I played for the Gunners. We changed names a couple times and we played in SoCal. So I spent like every weekend in LA. Um, and then I played in college, obviously at Menlo College for 4 years. So now I coach occasionally. I like to still be around soccer when I can. And I help out with the soccer agency as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So diving right into it, why soccer? So why'd you decide to play soccer?
Um, yeah, I feel like when I was little, I was hyper, so my parents put me in that. But I played, basketball, softball. I personally chose soccer just because I don't know. I always felt like more free there. Like the basketball court was so small for me that I just would like be. I would have too much energy. Um, Softball that same way. Like I tried to play it in high school because my mom was a 3 sport athlete in high school. It's like, oh, let me try this, and I just could not do it. I was like standing on first base, like it was just so different. It's such a different type of sport that it wasn't for me. Um, so I just liked it because when I was younger, it definitely helped me with my energy. And then I just kind of like fell in love with it. I know as cliche as that sounds, um, but I loved watching it, and I would, play any chance I got. And it was just different to me. It was very I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I'm sure you feel that same way with wrestling. Like when you watch it, you just have these like emotions that you're just like in awe, like, oh wow, how beautiful. I didn't really feel like that way with other sports, even though, I did enjoy watching and playing them.
And what position did you play?
I've literally played everywhere. So I started as a defender, then I was a forward, and then what I played in college was center mid, but I didn't start playing that until maybe my sophomore year of high school. But even my senior year, I would literally play 3 different positions in a game, in a half. So I was always been that player that just put me anywhere, we'll figure it out. Um, my coach growing up always told me, you're not a midfielder, you're not a forward, you're not a defender, you're a soccer player. So you should be able to play anywhere I put you. So I always kind of kept that mindset.
That's cool. I actually really like that because it kind of makes you just overall like a better athlete because you could get
Mm-hmm.
put anywhere. So
Exactly. It definitely helped me in like the soccer IQ part because when you start to think of yourself as a certain position, you start to only think that way. So when you're constantly changing positions, you have to think as a defender. And if, I was an attacker for a long time, I could think like, okay, what would I do as an attacker that can help me as a defender against an attacker or something like that. So I just think that was a big thing of how it helped me in my thinking for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I really like that. So like with soccer, so looking back at my like career, I played 1 year of soccer, and they basically put me in soccer because my wrestling coaches were like, "Hey, you need to get your endurance up." So I did 1 year, and it was difficult. Just I wasn't used to running. As you know, most wrestlers we don't like running because running equals cutting weight. So
Yeah.
I didn't like doing it, but it was fun. I had like a lot of fun, and now, especially when I go to Arizona, like with my cousins, they play a lot of like indoor soccer. So
Mm.
I'm not good at soccer, but it's fun to me. But with that said, I did feel like the physical demands of the sport. but I only played 1 year. So like, what was like for you like the most physically demanding part about being a soccer player?
Yeah, obviously it's the running. I look back now and think like, oh wow, like I used to run that much, or I had always been the type of player too that had to once I started to take it more seriously. Because when you're 12, you can run for days, right? Like you just nap that. But in high school, I would do so much extra stuff on my own in terms of running because I needed to. I that was my personal goal, but also like I had that body type, I had all that stuff that I needed to constantly run to be in shape. Whereas I had teammates that could take the whole summer off and 2 weeks before our fitness test, they can start running again and get back in shape. I was never like that. And I played midfield. So that, I mean, you're typically going to be a 90-minute player. You're running back and forth constantly. That's going to be the position that runs the most. Any soccer player is going to tell you that. It's not the one that works hard. It's not the one that has the hardest job, but they're definitely the players that run the most. So that was always the hardest, was to just stay in shape and be in shape.
Yeah. And with that said, like, what would you say was like the most like mentally demanding part of the sport?
I think for me personally, once I started to have like it was confidence of just being confident in myself as a player and understanding that once you make a mistake, that's fine. It's how you recover from that. I had a lot of like, I didn't want to make any mistakes because I just didn't want to disappoint my teammates and my coach. So I was really hard on myself in that sense. But I felt like then I became overly confident in the sense of like, that's just kind of how I made up for it, like to let things go. And then I think once I got older, the mental part was definitely balancing everything. Like in college, it was just balancing work, balancing school, balancing soccer, balancing, social lives and family life and all that stuff. I think that was definitely the hardest.
Yeah. And how did you handle those things? Like, what did you do to make sure that you were mentally tough with all that?
Um, I don't know. I think at that time, like I just was so busy that it kind of like it seemed like everything was good. Looking back, I'm like, oh, like I definitely could have done this better. I definitely could have done that better from a mental standpoint. But for the most part, I just try to. I want to acknowledge it, right? Like I understand, like okay, I'm stressed for school. How can I do this? Um, for me, for the most part, soccer had always been that release for me. It for the first few years wasn't as much of a like mental constraint as like my last year, for example. Like my last year, that was like the worst thing for me. Whereas the first 3 years, like soccer was a very good release for me. So it helped me in my other aspects. So that was a good like anchor for me for my sport. Whereas other people, their sport can add pressure to them. I felt like it released a lot of my pressure. But I just feel like I just being in tune and understanding and having a lot of other things like soccer in college wasn't, my only thing I had going on. So if I did have a bad practice, if I did need to get away, I can go to work and be like, oh, I had a good shift at work, or I can focus on school. I can focus on my social life. That it's just all about the balance that I come to realize. Like, don't put too much pressure on any one thing.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. I think looking back on like my personal career, I didn't have I had weird like seasons of like other outlets. Besides that, wrestling was like everything. I was always in the room. I was always lifting. I was always running. Um, During season, like I had no friendships. I didn't talk to anyone. And then I would pop up like right after season ended and we were going into summer, I would pop up and I'm like, hey guys, I'm back. And a lot of my friends didn't like that. It didn't help my friendships, but looking back, I think like I would have definitely like done better at like balance.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of sounded like you had that already going for you, like knowing like okay, like soccer, I love soccer, but it's not my life. And doing that do you feel like that made you like a better soccer player because you just weren't so like um you just weren't so focused on just like soccer or die?
I think, okay, maybe the way I worded it was a little different, but I think what helped me was the balance in terms of like compartmentalizing stuff. So it's like at soccer, I was focused on soccer, and I didn't like to take a bad practice with me to my other things, even though sometimes you can. So that's more what, now that I'm thinking about it, that's more how that helped me, was just kind of like separating that stuff. Um, I don't know. I felt like it almost hurt me to be like so passionate about my sport, because honestly, where a lot of my teammates didn't feel the same way. So I was always the type of teammate that was like, calm down, or being told like, calm down, it's just a game, calm down, it's not that serious. And to me, it's like, when I'm at soccer, I'm focusing on soccer, and I want to, get the most out of my practice, get the most out of whatever. Because I know I only have those 2 hours in the morning, and then I have other stuff I need to, work on. So I'm going to try and utilize the most as I can. So I think in some aspects, personally it made me a better soccer player. But I think maybe as a teammate, it might have hurt me a little bit for sure.
Yeah. So would you say that's because like people just didn't take it serious like on your team, or they didn't know how to do what you did where it was like you focus on the task at hand?
I think it's a bit of both. I think honestly, those were people that came in with, oh yeah, like soccer's cool, but like there's so many other things, and like they just want to mix everything. And um, so I think that's really what it was, is, they obviously were there and they did their job. They didn't have the same mindset maybe, or like they just didn't have the same relationship with soccer as, me and some, a handful of my other teammates. That's just the truth. Just wasn't it at that time in their lives, and that's fine. But for me as a teammate, I was like, I'm this dedicated, or like I feel this way. Like, why don't you guys feel this way? But that's something that, looking back, like, everyone has a different relationship with soccer, with things going on in their lives, that's their business type of thing.
Yeah. Going kind of focusing on that, the aspect of like teamwork. Um, I didn't have a good um like relationship with my teammates just because I had a similar mindset where I took wrestling a lot more serious than my teammates. And with wrestling, as you know, like you have maybe 1 to 2 partners depending on your weight class that you can like work with. And then when you're in a room with people that don't want to win the way that you want to win, or they don't care, um, you're kind of like you're stuck. So my 2 to 3 partners were, some were suspended because they were drinking, they got caught drinking. Some were showing up late to practice. Some just weren't showing up to practice. So I was kind of just left like to pick up the pieces. And so I didn't learn the, I guess you could say, like the benefits of like teamwork until I
Mm-hmm.
actually became like a college coach. That was when I realized, okay, like you do need, even though wrestling is considered more like a individual sport, as a coach, I realized, okay, well, in order for that individual to get better, they need 2 to 3 guys that are like solid and they're in the same mindset. Um, all that to say is that how how important was teamwork like for you and for like the people around you? And did you think that, because from what it sounded like is like a lot of your teammates weren't on the same mindset as you, did you think that that like affected you in any way, mentally, physically, maybe you could have been on a better team? How would you look at that?
Yeah, looking back, um, you know, sometimes I think like, maybe I should have transferred, and maybe I should have done something else, or maybe this, maybe that. But um, I think when my team wasn't on the same page, I felt more pressure as a player, and I felt, you know, whether my coaches wanted to or not, they put more pressure on players like me because, and I think that's what my teammates didn't understand, that if you're not doing the work, someone kind of has to pick up your slack, especially in like a sport like soccer, where all of you are on the field at the same time. You guys are all competing together. That, you know, if my forwards don't drop and help us defend, I have to do that, and our defenders have to do that. So things like that is where I felt like my junior year, for example, I felt like our team chemistry was great. We had a lot of success. We had a lot of off the field success as well. And that was the type of environment that I liked. Whereas my other years, I wouldn't say we had quite that. And you could see it on the field. You know, if we didn't get along at practice, or if we didn't get along off the field, you see that. And that's where it was very frustrating for, obviously, not only me, but most people on my team, because it's just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. So I think teamwork is important to have, you know, good results in that sense, and just make everybody easier. It just makes it easier for everybody because you're on the same page. I know I can trust you. I know that if, you know, for some reason I can't do what I'm supposed to do, you'll pick up a little bit of slack, and if that happens to you, I got you. But when you're on the team and you just are not on the same page, you don't know if they're going to go do it or you need to go do it. And I feel like for me personally, there's multiple times in my career in college that when my team wasn't doing what we needed to do, it would somehow fall back on me as a player, or in other players. Like there's a handful of us that were kind of in those leadership positions, or maybe even some of the better players on the team, that our coach would look to be like, fix it, or like, this is on you, or something like that, which looking back, that's something that mentally was like really hard for me to deal with, because it's like, what, like I'm doing my job, like why do I have to worry about them? They're adults, we're adults, like.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it is what it is.
Yeah. So using that now, do you see that kind of how do I want to word this? Looking back at all that stuff, do you see that how that affects like your coaching style now and how you promote teamwork?
Yeah, so it's so funny because I transitioned to coaching, you know, within 2 months after I stopped playing, and I left my soccer career on a you know, messy note, I would say. So when I started to coach, it was very weird for me to be back in a soccer environment. But that was awesome experience for me because I had a great coach that I coached with, as well. And I was coaching high school, so I was like, I'm not that much older than these girls. Like, how is it going to be? And my girls were just just wanted to learn. They were good. They were a good group. So it made me realize that, you know, sometimes coaches do things, and as a player, from a player mindset, you might not always know. And as a coach, I would be like, oh, I can't really explain it to them that way because that's not necessarily what I mean. So I like that I got to have that perspective from a coach, like, oh, that's why my coaches might have done this. Or, you know, there's that side, but then there's some things that I'm like, whoa, like my coaches did that. I would never do that to these girls. You know, I would never speak to them a certain way. I would never, you know, make them feel a certain way. I would try not to. So I think my own personal journey with soccer definitely influenced how I am as a coach now, or even my teammates. You know, I'm like, oh, that person reminds me of my teammate. Like maybe I need to talk to her this way because as a teammate, I need to talk to her this way. As a coach, maybe I need to talk to her like this. So I think my journey for sure influenced how I coach, and I'm glad sometimes having some, you know, what I think is negative experiences, because those are like the most beneficial thing I could have as a young coach coming in, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think it definitely helps you become a better coach just because you figure out, like you said, you know, like if this coach did this and this is the reaction I got or the response that I got, or it made me feel really bad or it made me feel like garbage, like now I know, like, okay, when I coach, I don't want my athlete to feel like that. Or maybe there was some areas where I needed to get pushed a little bit harder and my coach didn't say anything. Now I know, like, okay, when I see that in my on my soccer field or wrestling room, wherever it is, like, okay, I'm gonna do the opposite of like what that coach should have done. Um, so I think that's really cool, like using your experiences to like benefit you. Um, and so with that said, my final two questions for you, um, to kind of give you a background of like the channel. So with this channel, I do want to, you're the first guest, of course, so congratulations. Um,
Thanks.
but I do want, um, to make sure that this channel is like a safe like space for athletes, because I think especially, obviously I have you on and you're in a completely different sport than, you know, I grew up in. But looking back on like wrestling, there was a lot of, um, there was this idea behind like mental toughness, and mental toughness meant you can't cry, you can't show emotion, you can't, express concerns. It's just kind of like you show up to practice, you break your body, it's all glory, and it's like there's just like this idea of just like you just got to be a man, you just got to be a man, you got to suck it up and be a man. But as we know, like, you know, with mental health and mindfulness and everything, like people need to have a space to breathe. Especially athletes that are elite and they do crazy stuff. They need that space to just like talk. And one thing I do, uh, obviously, I do mental skills with like athletes, but I always try to tell athletes, like, hey, like, if you come in and you talk to me, um, you don't have to impress me. Like, I'm already impressed with the fact that you're a college athlete, you're an high school athlete, whatever it is. That's awesome already, that you're doing that. So don't come in here try to impress me. Like, I'm already impressed. And with that said, like, if you're having a hard week, and it's simple stuff where it's like your girlfriend broke up with you or your boyfriend broke up with you, like, you could talk to me about it. Like, we could talk about it and we could express it, because um, for some reason people want to deny that that doesn't affect your performance, but it does. Every little thing affects your performance. You could just have a super bad day, you could get like a C on your test and you studied so hard for it, and then you go to practice and it's just like your mind's on the test or what you could have done better, and it affects you. So all that to say is, like, I do like to provide that space for athletes. So with that said, um, what do you currently do to make sure that you're mindful and like you take care of your mind and you take care of your heart and your soul and all that stuff? What are you doing that, another athlete can implement today?
Yeah, I think like obviously what you're saying is super important. It's something I wish I knew and something I wish my coaches would have stressed more. And coaches in general should stress more. I don't know if you saw that thing that's kind of going on right now with Dak, right? Prescott, the little quarterback from Cowboys. Dak,
Yeah.
Dak. I keep saying Dak. How he kind of just spoke about his depression and from a series of things, and someone said like he's America's football team quarterback, like he can't really, or he shouldn't say that because like he needs to be a leader. It just kind of like came off very, dismissive. And I think as athletes we forget that we can, we could feel that way. We have a lot on our plates, and coaches might forget that sometimes because athletes are good at that, of just kind of like I'm at my sport today, I'm at practice, I need to just focus. But in reality they have 10, 15 things on their minds. So now I just try and like, I took a class my sophomore year, and after that I kind of really changed my mindset of just understanding what is coming up for you and why. With emotions, it doesn't care that we're at practice. It doesn't care that we're running. It doesn't care that we're about to compete. Like, it's going to come up. Obviously, there's times and places that you can deal with things, better. But if you don't start addressing those things, it's going to come up right before you're about to wrestle, right before you're about to play. And it's going to be like, hey, like you pushed me off. Now I'm here. So I just try and like acknowledge everything that I'm feeling right then and there, because it's coming up then and there for a reason. and try not to push it off, because it'll come up in a different way, in a different place that, you know, I might not be suited for. It might be at work or something, and I'm like, oh, like I'm upset right now, or I don't really know why, or I'm anxious or whatever. So I just try and be mindful of that and acknowledge, okay, why am I feeling this way? Let's think about it. Let's sit in it. Sometimes I have to take breaks, like from everything, and just not be on my phone, not do anything. I ironically got back into running. The air quality is not great right now, so I haven't been able to run for a little bit, but I was running every day, and just, which is really weird, because when I was playing soccer, I was like, I'm never running after soccer. Like, I'm sick of this. But then I just kind of got back into it, and that was like a really good, it felt familiar to me, of like, this is kind of like soccer, and, you know, it's on my own terms though. Like, I'm running because I want to. And I would listen to podcasts or books and stuff, and that really helped to just bring up topics and let me think. But also, I feel like when I was running, it was very like a free space. Like, my body felt good, my mind felt good. I felt like escaping in that same way. So it's just finding those things that, like, running obviously is similar to soccer in some way, that I can still feel comfortable doing, but it's on my terms. And I don't have to run 5 miles so I can be prepared for a fitness test. I can run for 20 minutes and be like, oh, all right, I feel good, I'm done now. So it's just really just trusting yourself and knowing, like, you know your body, you know yourself, and you need to be in touch with that. So that's just what it is. It's just acknowledgement more than anything, I think.
Yeah, that's super good. Thanks for that. I think it's super helpful for athletes, because like we said, you know, it's just kind of, we're taught to like suppress it, and it's like, or you deal with it on your own time. But I really think that it's important to create that space for athletes to, you know, to express what's going on, and especially not to push them down for it. I think that's crucial, because then we create athletes who are, it just reinforces that idea of just suppressing it. And now an athlete who opened up, now they're like, I'm never going to open up again, because look what happened last time. Like, so like you said, you know, I think that was all like super good, super important. So yeah, so last question, what would you say, um, any advice for current, future soccer players, and then especially women, athletes and women soccer players? What would you say to encourage them, you know, on this journey that they have?
Yeah, I think just like trust yourself and trust that, like, you have, I don't know, a big thing that I'm into is the I am mantra. Like, you are everything you will be. You are what you've been through. Like, everything that you need is inside of you. So, like, you know, you might not be fit right now, but you can be if you do the right things. Like, you have the capacity or potential to be whatever that you need, you know? So just trust yourself, ask questions. I feel like once we get to a certain level, we think that we should know things, and we don't want to ask questions because we don't want people to look at us and be like, how do you not know that? But just ask questions, and keep trying to grow. For women, just don't, I would say, trust yourself in that sense. If you know what you're talking about, don't let someone tell you you don't. You know, have the attitude that you have in general, whether it's, you know, people think it's good, some people think it's bad. I have a very strong personality. So, and I always have. So when I got to a level, I had issues with people at times, like authority, like my coaches. But at the end of the day, like, I wanted to grow, and I was just asking questions, and they might not have known the answer, and they felt like I need to be defensive instead of just be like, I don't know what, you know. I think as a coach, sometimes you think like, oh, I don't want to tell them I don't know, I should know this or something, whatever. So as a girl, especially young girls, like, ask questions, and just try and gain what you need to gain from your coaches and stuff like that. And just trust yourself. You know, if you're being emotional, you know, if you're not, you know, if you need this, you know, if you don't. And don't kind of let somebody tell you, oh, no, you don't feel that way. Oh, no, that's not what that is. Like, you know yourself, trust yourself, basically.
Definitely. Super good. like always, we've had a few of these conversations, so they're always like listening to you talk about soccer. I'm always learning something new. I remember the first time I interviewed you, and I was like, so I forgot what I asked you, but I was like, hey, like, what does this mean? I think I asked
Oh,
offside.
outside.
And you looked at me like, how do you not know this? But yeah, so once again, thanks for coming on today. Um, I am sure this is going to be super helpful for like athletes, not just soccer players, but like all athletes when they listen to this. So definitely we'll have you on again, and then we'll dive deeper into like other things. So, but other
For
than that,
sure.
thanks for coming today. It's been fun.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you for bringing this topic up. It's unfortunate that like obviously we're both done with our, playing. So I'm glad that we are able to have these conversations so that people that are still playing are like, oh wow, like let me talk about these things now so I don't have to wait until I'm done playing and think about all the times I should have talked about it and how it could have changed your thought process and just how you felt really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, this is not the last time we'll see you. We'll have you back on this. And then, yeah, thanks again. Appreciate you.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome.